Well, I moved out of my teepee. And believe it or not, I didn't do it for the obvious reasons. I was living in this when it was pretty dang cold, and I was actually enjoying that. So the obvious reason would be the cold. It was getting down to at least 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and I think below, which is pretty dang cold for me and pretty dang cold for this area. But believe it or not, I was actually fine and enjoying it. It was really the smoke. I talked a little bit about that in my teepee living video recently, and I just couldn't keep a fire going without it smoking a lot. And now there are a lot of tips and tricks, which some of them I've left it up so that I can come out here and try them. But on the other hand, some of them, like using a wood stove and things like that, at some point, when are you no longer in a teepee and now you're just in something that's been modified so much that it only looks like a teepee on the outside? I do this teepee living for getting connected to the way that people groups have lived for throughout history and around the world. They've used a structure like this, and so my goal is to understand how they did it. And so I've got a lot to learn, but I want to go that avenue rather than just modifying it with a wood stove and all kinds of modern things, building up a pallet, insulating a floor, that kind of thing. I'd rather dig down, if anything. So it was the smoke that I was dealing with at the time, but also I've wanted to live in an insulated, small insulated box for a long time. I'll tell you more about that. I started out in 2017 in an RV. Since then, I've lived in many different housing styles. I've lived in a few different types of uninsulated sheds. I stayed in a wall tent. I've lived outside, and my horse trailer. And all the while, trying to determine what is the essence of a shelter and what style pertains to me. I still haven't figured that out completely, and I'm in the process of continuing my experimentation. Second, I streamlined my life. So for the past 5-6 years, I've been minimizing and developing regular systems, habits, whatever, that are consistent and predictable as far as things like food and hobbies and daily life patterns. That way I'm able to determine what's essential to my indoor shelter life and what isn't. So in my mind, I believed I could stay in a 7x10 and be quite comfortable and have plenty of room. And I'll talk about that some more in a minute. Now understand that I do care about aesthetics. I've remodeled a couple of old Craftsmans, and I do love the beauty aspect of things. But right now, my focus in my life is doing away with all the unnecessary things that we do in society just to look good. And like I said, kind of developing what's the essence. Like a teepee is just a canvas over some sticks, essentially, with a heat source. And I've got some cowhides that I'm wanting to develop a willow frame and put the cowhides over. And once you think in terms of blocking yourself from rain, wind, and keeping in heat, then all of a sudden shelter opens up a whole lot of doors. And that's why this house that I built, it's not pretty. It's just basically some wood to hold some insulation together and strong enough to keep the roof up and to keep the rain out and the wind out. I worked construction, so I understand the codes and the modern building practices, but what I did was I strayed away from those in an attempt to save materials and to save weight and just do the minimum that I could get away with. And so far I'm really happy with it. But like I said, it's just not pretty. So here we have it. Like I said, the exterior dimensions are 10 by 7. That makes the interior roughly 9 by 6.5. I think it's more like 6 foot 3 inches. I wanted it just barely taller than me. As you can see, I've just got plywood going across, and I went with plywood because it was the same price as OSB, but this is just 3/16 if I remember right, no, 3/8 I mean. So it weighed about half the weight. I was trying to keep weight down and costs down, and it was plenty rigid. However, on the sides, right here, I drove out of town to find some 10-foot OSB. That way I would have a full span, and I screwed in about 3 or 4 times as many screws as you'd normally use, so that I would have that rigidity. And my only regret is I kind of wish I would have spent $60 more for a piece for the bottom and a piece for the top, because they did get a little off square. The walls are nice and plumb, but the floor and the ceiling got a little off, and that kind of made the sheathing difficult. But otherwise, it's plenty sturdy. And the other regret that I have is that I didn't. I cut the top sheet because it wasn't a full 8 feet, and I wish I would have let that overlap, because the OSB is a little wider, and that creates a ledge for rain to get on. However, the place gets so hot, I'm not worried about the moisture, but it would be nice to have done it that way. I thought the flange would look bad, but it looks bad anyway. So currently I just have plastic for a roof, which does the trick, and I found out that tarps are not waterproof. So I wasted 40 bucks on a tarp, and that was kind of irritating. And then this is my ugly dog shelter, because one of my dogs has to be pinned up. Pallets make a quick and easy porch and deck. This is some oak pallets that I got for free from a place. Really happy about them. And I thought that I would build my shelter out of those, but they're so dang heavy, I decided not to. I also have some tall pallets made out of 2x4s that I was going to use, but they're really off square, and I just decided that I wanted to go with 2x6 walls anyway, because I wanted the extra insulation depth. So that's a little bit about it. Oh, what I did, I also designed a construction method that would minimize materials. I don't have a whole lot of pictures, but here's one where you can see that I just nailed the studs to the top framing and the floor framing, and then I covered all of those to hold insulation. I always wanted to stay away from insulation because I didn't want to create a house for mice. However, on this one, I did close it up pretty tight, and I also sheathed the bottom, so that'll keep mice out. So as long as I kind of keep watch and make sure that none are digging holes in the plywood, in the plywood to get up into the floor or into the walls, as long as I just keep observant and watch for that starting to happen, I should be able to stay ahead of them and keep mice from making this their home. The door was quite simple. I want a couple more hinges so I can cut this door and have it open. That way I can keep animals out, but I can also let the cold air in, because most of the time I'm too hot. I wasn't going to do any windows, but once I saw how easy it is to heat this place, I decided to go ahead and put a window in, and which is nice because I can see the sunrise. But also then I use my light bulb a whole lot less, which uses my solar energy, so I can cut down on that use. As long as it's daylight, I could pretty much not need my light bulb. And then of course my fireplace, which I didn't intend to have a wood stove, and I'll talk about that when we go inside. Look out, babies! This is an ongoing problem. If it's not the goats, it's Maximus. I always got to be careful opening the door and stepping out. Well, here in the interior, it's compact, but so far I really like the space. I used just 1/8 inch sheathing on the inside because all it has to do is hold up the insulation, and it's much lighter even than the plywood. Up on the roof I needed something more rigid, so I used the plywood. Back here I pieced it together, so it's pretty ugly, but it saved me from having to buy a couple more sheets. I'm going to do a more detailed video on the inside and how I'm set up when I do a video about living in a compact space. So this is going to be more about the construction. The side walls and the back wall, roof and floor are all 2x6 with loose fill insulation. And the front is a 2x4 wall, and only this 1/4 is insulated. But what I found is it's so easy to stay warm in here that I haven't bothered to insulate it. I could insulate the door and the top of that wall, and eventually I will. Pretty soon we're supposed to get some really cold weather, and then I'll get to test this out, because I really didn't get it completed until our cold weather was over with and temperatures warmed up again. But so far this thing roasts me out. And it kind of gets to the point of diminishing returns, where if I'm going to use a wood stove, I could actually build this about, who knows, 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet longer and stay just as warm with the same amount of firewood. So that's something to consider. I didn't initially intend to have a wood stove. I wanted this to be comfortable and convenient, and so I was doing propane. So that I could just wake up in the morning, be warm, make my coffee, and start studying. But what I found out was they advertised this. It's kind of like zero-down sleeping bags. Whoops. I should make my bed if I'm going to have people over. That's better. So it's kind of like zero-down sleeping bags, where yes, it is zero down, but you have to know how the testing goes and what they mean. So this thing, they say that it can heat up to 250 square feet. Well, this is 70 square feet. So I figured at almost 1/4 of the advertised amount of space, I figured it'd be more than adequate. Turns out, if it's cold in here and I turn on the heater, it has a hard time getting it warmed up. I haven't tested it long enough to see that if after a day it'll make it nice and hot. But what I have found is if I run the wood stove and let that die out, so it's already warm in here, and then I turn that thing on, I'm sweating. So I can turn it down to low. But granted, that's only at temperatures in, say, the high 20s, and 30s is all as low as I've been able to test it so far. But also it puts out a whole lot more moisture than I thought. Somebody pointed that out to me, and then I started realizing it in my horse trailer. So that's another reason to use the wood stove. I just run this when I want to, and this I run and it dries everything out. That way I don't have to worry about humidity in the walls and growing mold. But it took up this extra space. This was space that I was going to use for indoor projects and more room for the dogs to lay. And if I really needed to bring the goats in, I was going to make a place there that I could keep clean. But the wood and the wood stove take all that space. So that's why I could build it another few feet. And in retrospect, maybe I would have. However, this size I like because I can put it on a trailer, or I could even put it on my truck bed. Take my bed off and put it in place of my truck bed. I might do that. So I wish, like the outside, I wish that I would have overlapped these. They're only an 1/8 inch thick, and I could have. Instead, I butted them up together and insulation comes through, so that's one mistake. Second, it would be nice to have batt insulation instead of loose fill in the walls where it can compact. If insulation compacts too much, it doesn't insulate properly. But so far, no problems. That's about it. The floors, I took apart one of my oak pallets and laid them in. And I actually set them up in such a way that I can push them back that way and pull them out. I did that in case I wanted to take the wood stove out and all the stuff and lift it up by hand and put it on a trailer. but it's hard to get enough guys to do that, and it's looking like it'll just be easier to jack it up. But anyway, that's how I built it. The roof is loose, so I can still get up there and add more insulation if the walls do compact. But again, hopefully they wouldn't compact too much. The whole thing is designed that if I want to redo it someday with nicer finishes and make it look attractive, that I can still do that. Take these floorboards out and saw them straight, and so that they all butt up together really nicely. That would be nice. The bed, I figured out the height on this because in my horse trailer I can sit like this, but I can only sit like this. And if I try to drink coffee in there, I have to like scoot down and drink it. So I measured enough for the mattress, and then for me to sit straight up and be able to drink coffee. That's how I came up with the height. It's a little warmer up here. So the floor does stay pretty cold because you know, the heat's starting off at a foot off the ground. So the floor is always kind of cold. So it's nice to be able to get up there and be really warm. So that's about it, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this interesting. I redid this part because the last one I did was 10 minutes. I'm already at 7 for crying out loud. It's amazing how time flies when I talk. So if you want to help me out on Patreon, you're welcome to. The link is in the description. If you want, you can follow me on Facebook. There's my personal, which I post all the time. And then there's my Over on the Wild Side Facebook page you can follow. I'm trying to get into using that one more. And I wanted to give a special thanks to all you guys who watch all my videos. And when you occasionally I get these comments saying, "Hey, I just found you. I've been watching all your videos. I've been binge watching it." I really like that. Appreciate that. So I just wanted to give a big thanks to you guys, and that's encouraging. So that's it. I'm going to edit this and post it. Thanks for watching, and I'll try to get another video out soon. Take care. Remember, life's a lot more fun over on the wild side.